What if the man who despised everything about you became the father of your child? In the glittering but ruthless city of Seoul, a Nigerian woman's fate collided with the most feared Korean mafia boss in the underworld. She arrived as a maid. He treated her like she was invisible, worse than invisible, like she was dirt beneath his designer shoes. But one forbidden, impossible night tore their worlds open. What followed was not just a love story, it was a war of cultures, of pride, of old hatred, meeting something neither of them had words for. And at the center of it all, a baby boy who could either save an empire or shatter it. Stay with me until the very end, because the twists in this story will break you open. Welcome to the Storyverse TV. If Afro-Korean storytelling is your thing, hit that like button right now and subscribe. Let us go. Ada Okoro stepped out of Incheon Airport into the biting Seoul winter, carrying one battered suitcase and a heart full of desperate hope. Back in Lagos, life had ground her family down to the bone. Her father died suddenly, not peacefully, not with dignity. He left behind crushing debt and a mother whose kidneys were quietly failing her. The job offer came through a recruitment agency, live-in maid for a wealthy Korean household. Triple her current salary, free accommodation, a lifeline. Ada was smart. She knew what wealthy Korean household could mean. She told herself she could handle whatever came. She had no idea. The first time she laid eyes on Kang Ji-hoon, he was standing in the center of his Gangnam penthouse like a man who had never once been told no. Tall, sharp jawline, eyes like polished obsidian, cold, still, and completely empty of warmth. 32 years old, dressed head to toe in black, the feared heir to one of Seoul's most powerful underground empires. His people called him the Ice Dragon. He looked at Ada the way someone looks at a mistake. You are the new maid, not a question, a verdict, an African, in my house. My mother arranged this without asking me. Ada met his gaze. Her Nigerian pride was already burning behind her ribs. Yes, sir, I am Ada Okoro. I am here to work. He stepped closer. Clean, cook, stay out of my sight. You will not speak unless spoken to. You will not bring your customs or your music into my home. This is a Korean household. He turned and walked away without another word, as if the conversation had already bored him. That was day one. For 3 months, Ada endured. She woke at 5 in the morning, cleaned a penthouse the size of her entire street back in Surulere, taught herself Korean recipes from YouTube videos she watched in silence at midnight. Ji-hoon criticized everything: the angle of a folded collar, the seasoning in his soup, the way she placed his shoes. He never shouted. He was worse than a man who shouts. He was a man who looked at you and made you feel like you did not fully exist. But Ada was a watcher. She always had been. She noticed the way he came home at 3 in the morning, sometimes limping, sometimes with his knuckles split open, always alone. She noticed the old photograph on the shelf in his study, a younger Ji-hoon, maybe 16, standing beside a man who had his same sharp jaw and far, far kinder eyes. The photo was never dusted by the other staff. She started dusting it herself. She noticed that the ice dragon was lonely in a way that had nothing to do with being alone. She kept that observation locked away. It was not her business. She was there to work, send money home, and survive. Then one night, everything changed. Ji-hoon staggered through the penthouse door just after midnight, bleeding from a gash across his ribs and a cut above his eye. A rival gang had ambushed his convoy. His guards had scattered. His physician was unreachable. Every member of staff had slipped quietly away. Ada was the only one still there. She did not think. She acted. She guided him to his bedroom, cut away the ruined shirt, began cleaning the wounds with steady hands, even as her heart hammered. She had grown up in Lagos. She had seen knife wounds before. She knew how to stay calm when her hands wanted to shake. Ji-hoon watched her work. He said nothing for a long time. You should be afraid of me. His voice was different at that hour, stripped of armor, rough with pain. I have been afraid before, Ah Da replied quietly, not looking up. Fear does not clean wounds. Something passed across his face that she had not seen there before. Not softness exactly, more like recognition. The wall between them did not fall that night. It cracked. What happened next was not planned. It was not wise. It was two people, both of them guarded, both of them carrying grief they had never named, finding each other in the dark. In that space there was no ice dragon, no Nigerian maid, no hierarchy, just two human beings. Morning arrived like a sentence. Ji-hoon lay still for a long moment, staring at the ceiling. Then he turned and looked at Ada with eyes that had sealed themselves shut again. Last night was a mistake. I was not myself. A pause. Pack your things. I will pay you 3 months severance. You will not speak of this to anyone. Ada did not cry. She would not give him that. She looked at him for one long steady moment. Then she said, I understand, sir. She packed her bag. She walked out with her head level and her jaw set. She carried herself. She carried her pride, and she carried something else, though she did not know it yet. What does Ada discover in the weeks that follow? And why can't Ji-hoon stop thinking about the woman he threw away? Keep watching, friends. Ada found a room in a cramped apartment block on the outskirts of Seoul, shared with two other African women who asked no questions and gave her space to quietly fall apart. The morning sickness arrived like an ambush 3 weeks later. She sat on the bathroom floor at 4 in the morning and stared at the pregnancy test until the two lines blurred. She thought about Ji-hoon's face when he dismissed her. She thought about his words. Africans have no place in my world. She decided to say nothing. She would manage alone. She had always managed alone. She worked 2 part-time jobs, waitressing during the day, cleaning offices at night. She hid her growing belly under oversized hoodies and sent money home to her mother every single month without fail. But the fear lived in her like a second heartbeat. What would happen when she could not hide it any longer? Meanwhile, across Seoul, Kang Ji-hoon was losing his mind in a way he could not explain or admit. His empire was under siege. Rival families were forming alliances against him. His mother, the formidable Madame Kang, was pushing relentlessly for him to marry a Korean heiress to forge a strategic alliance. You need a Korean wife, Madame Kang told him, a proper one. Solid bloodlines, solid family. Stop drifting. Ji-hoon agreed to meet the heiress. He sat across from her at the finest restaurant in Gangnam and felt absolutely nothing. She was not Ada. He told himself he was not thinking about Ada. He hired a private investigator 2 days later. The report came back in a week. Ada Okoro, 27, waitress, night cleaner, small apartment, Eastern Seoul. Currently, pregnant Ji-hoon read the line 3 times. He closed the file. He went to a board meeting and said nothing. He came home and sat in his study for 2 hours in the dark. Then he had his driver take him to her neighborhood. He found her in an alley near the market. 3 masked men had her cornered, not random thugs. Professionals, we have a message for Kang Ji-hoon, one of them was saying. The African girl disappears. Then we talk terms. Ji-hoon was out of the car before his driver had fully stopped. What followed was swift and brutal and very, very quiet. He took all 3 down in under 90 seconds. When he turned around, Ada was pressed against the wall, one hand over her mouth, the other instinctively cradling the curve of her belly beneath her coat. He saw the ice dragon, who had broken bones without flinching, who had stared down men twice his size and felt nothing, stood in a dark Seoul alley and felt something in his chest cave open. Ada, she lifted her chin. Before you say anything, is it mine? A long silence. Rain beginning to fall. Yes, she said. But you made yourself very clear about where I stood. So I made a decision. Ji-hoon looked at this woman who had dressed his wounds without being asked, who had walked out of his home with her head high after he humiliated her, who had said nothing, asked for nothing, and quietly survived. And for the first time in his adult life, he did not know what to say. He went down on one knee. Not to propose, just his legs would not hold him. Ji-hoon wants to bring her back. But can Ida trust a man whose first instinct was to discard her? And who ordered that attack? Keep watching. Ji-hoon moved Ada into his penthouse that same night. He told himself it was purely about protection. He told himself it was about the child. Ada let him tell himself that. But she set the rules immediately. I am not your maid this time. She stood in the middle of that enormous cold apartment and looked him dead in the eye. I am not your charity case either. I am here because my child's life may be in danger. The moment that threat is gone, I decide where I go. Are we clear? Ji-hoon held her gaze. Clear, Madame Kang arrived the next morning like a storm front. She was 61 years old and did not look it. Silver hair pulled back with military precision, eyes that had watched men beg for their lives and felt nothing. She had not survived everything she survived, so her son could embarrass her with an African woman carrying an illegitimate child. Get her out of this house, Madame Kang said to Ji-hoon, not looking at Ada. I will arrange a generous settlement. She will be comfortable, she stays, Ji-hoon said. Madame Kang turned slowly and looked at her son as if she had never seen him before. This child is Kang blood, Ji-hoon continued. I will not hide that. And I will not pay this woman off like she is a liability. She is not leaving. Madame Kang left without another word. She did not concede. She retreated, which Ada would come to learn was something entirely different. Life in the penthouse was tense and complicated and occasionally beautiful. Ada refused to disappear into the background. She cooked, filling the cold kitchen with the smells of jollof rice and egusi soup and pepper chicken. She played music as she moved through the apartment, Burna Boy, Fela, Asa, and the place that had always felt like a mausoleum began to feel, tentatively, like somewhere people might actually live. Ji-hoon began doing something he had not done since his father died. Coming home for dinner. One evening, Ada caught him hovering in the kitchen doorway and said, without turning around, are you going to stand there, or are you going to learn how to make pepper soup? A pause. Then the sound of a stool scraping the floor as he sat down. She taught him slowly, in English, throwing in Igbo words as she went. Onokbu, Utazi, Ede, watching him repeat them with the careful concentration of a man used to mastering difficult things. He remembered every word. The threats did not stop. Ji-hoon's second in command, a man he had trusted for 8 years, began behaving strangely. Missed briefings, unaccounted for late nights. Ji-hoon noticed. He waited and watched. Then came the ambush in Itaewon. Ji-hoon's convoy was hit from 3 directions. 3 of his men went down. Ji-hoon himself was pinned in a stairwell, taking fire from above, when Ada appeared at the end of the corridor. There is a service corridor behind the kitchen, left side of the building. I found it when I came here 3 months ago. I remember everything. She held his gaze steady. He did not waste time arguing. They moved. In the safe house afterward, Ji-hoon pressed his forehead briefly against Adi's temple and said quietly, You keep saving my life. Stop putting it in danger, she answered. But she did not pull away. The betrayal is closer than Ji-hoon knows. And Madame Kang is not done fighting. She is only just beginning. Keep watching. The confirmation came on a Tuesday. Park Sung-jin, 8 years of loyalty, complete access, trusted above everyone, had been feeding Ji-hoon's location and schedule to rival families for 4 months. He had also been the one who arranged the attack on Ada in the alley. Her death would have been presented as a message. Ji-hoon handled the betrayal quietly, the way he handled everything. Without theater, without mercy, Sung-jin disappeared from the story. But the damage was done. The rivals launched a full assault on the penthouse. Ada was in her 7th month. The attack came at 2 in the morning. Gunfire shattering the lower windows, lights going out, chaos in the dark. Ada stayed low, moved smart, kept herself away from the windows. She was terrified and she was controlled, and she did not fall apart. Ji-hoon fought like a man defending something that mattered more than himself. His men noticed it. In the middle of the chaos, Ada crawled to his side and pressed a gun into his hand. "My father used to tell me stories," she said, her voice low and strange in the noise. "About a business trip to Nairobi when he was young, about a Korean man he pulled out of an ambush, a man who would have died without him." Ji-hoon turned to look at her. He never told me the man's name, but he described him. Silver watch. A scar here, she touched her own left collarbone. He said the man promised him, "If you ever need anything, my family will answer." Silence between them, except for the sound of men fighting in the corridor outside. "That was my father," Ji-hoon said quietly. Kang Dae-won, Nairobi, 1991. Ada closed her eyes for a moment. Our fathers knew each other. Our fathers saved each other. When Ji-hoon looked at Ada in the flickering dark, he was not looking at an inconvenience or a complication or even a woman he desired. He was looking at family. The empire is wounded but standing. Now Ji-hoon must decide. Continue the life that almost got Ada killed, or burn it down and build something new. Keep watching. Ji-hoon went to war. But it was a different kind of war. He dismantled his enemies methodically, cutting their alliances and their revenue streams one by one, making their position untenable without a single dramatic confrontation. It took 3 months. It was precise, cold, and completely effective. While he dismantled, he also built. Quietly, carefully, he began moving pieces of the empire into legitimate channels. Import partnerships between Seoul and Lagos, a logistics company, a cultural exchange foundation. He was thinking about his son. Because he knew somehow with a bone-deep certainty it was a boy. Ada's mother arrived from Lagos when Ada was 8 months along. Ji-hoon arranged it without being asked. First-class flight, a warm room in the penthouse, everything ready. When the two women saw each other, Ada's whole body released something it had been holding for months. Her mother held her face in both hands and spoke quietly in Igbo, something that made Ada laugh even as she cried. Ji-hoon turned and walked away to give them privacy. But he paused in the corridor, his hand on the wall, and stood there in the silence, feeling something he had not felt since his father was alive. He felt like he was somewhere he was supposed to be. The baby came on a Sunday in early spring when the cherry blossoms were just beginning outside the hospital window. He was born crying, loud and certain of himself. He had dark, tight curls, his mother's wide eyes, and his father's stubborn jaw. He was entirely himself, and entirely both of them at once. Ji-hoon held him for the first time in the hospital room, with the light coming through the blinds. He did not say anything for a very long time. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red. "Kai," Ada said. "I want his name to be Kai." "Kai Okoro Kang Ji-hoon," said. "Both names, both worlds, no question about it." Madame Kang came to the hospital that evening. She stood at the foot of the bed and looked at her grandson for a long time. Ada watched her, waiting, then Madame Kang sat down beside Ada's bed. She held out her arms for the baby. Ada hesitated long enough to let the woman see that it was a choice, and then placed Kai in her arms. Madame Kang looked down at the baby's face for a long time. He has day one's jaw, she said softly. Her late husband. I had almost forgotten. When she left, she touched Ada's hand once, brief, deliberate, and gave her a single nod. It was not forgiveness, it was not welcome, but it was the beginning of both. Kai is here, but can the life they are building survive the weight of everything that came before? Keep watching, friends. They did not rush into anything. The months after Kai's birth were full and complicated and strangely ordinary. Ada woke at night for feeds. Ji-hoon, who allegedly needed 7 hours of uninterrupted sleep, somehow always appeared in the nursery doorway at 3 in the morning, looking disheveled, offering to take a shift. Ada let him. He learned how to burp a baby before he learned how to say I love you. Ada thought that was exactly right. She did not let the sweetness of that period make her forget who he had been. Forgiveness for Ada was not forgetting. It was choosing every day to stay present with the full truth of someone. The worst of them and the best of them together, Ji-hoon had been cruel to her. He had discarded her. He had been shaped by a world that told him certain human beings were worth less than others. And he had believed that. And he had acted on it. The difference was he knew it. He did not defend it. He did not explain it away. And he was, quietly and without fanfare, becoming someone different. One evening, when Kai was 7 months old, they sat on the rooftop garden of the penthouse. The Seoul skyline spread out in lights below them. Kai asleep on Ada's chest. Ji-hoon had set something up. Ankara fabric draped between the railings, moving softly in the night air. Roses alongside the tropical flowers her mother had taught her the names of as a child. A table, candles. I made mistakes that I cannot undo, he said. He was not looking at the skyline, he was looking at her. I was raised to believe things that were wrong, and I chose not to question them because it was easier not to. I will not try to explain that away. Ada said nothing. She waited. You taught me that strength is not about keeping everything the same. It is about being honest enough to change. He reached into his jacket pocket. I want to build something with you, not my world with you added to it. A new world, one that belongs to Kai and everyone who comes after him. The ring was simple. She had told him once, offhandedly, that she had no use for enormous stones. He had remembered. Ada Okoro, will you marry me? She looked at him for a long moment, this complicated, damaged, slowly becoming better man, and felt the full weight of everything it had taken to arrive at this rooftop. Yes, she said, but we do this properly. Nigerian side and Korean side both. My aunt in Enugu does not play. Ji-hoon smiled, a real one, rare and unguarded. I am aware. I have already spoken to her. Ada stared at him. You called my aunt Ngozi? I called your aunt Ngozi. She gave me 45 minutes of instructions and a list of what the family expects. I have taken notes. Ada laughed so hard she woke Kai, who looked up at both of them with his father's serious expression and his mother's bright eyes, utterly unimpressed. The wedding was held on a Saturday in late autumn, in a garden venue outside Seoul that Ada's mother helped choose. Ada wore a white gown with Nigerian aso-oke woven through the bodice and a gold and ivory jelle that her mother tied herself that morning, crying the entire time. Ji-hoon wore a fitted hanbok in deep navy with Ankara detailing at the sleeves and collar. The ceremony opened with a Korean pieback blessing and then moved into an Igbo traditional wine-carrying ceremony that had every guest, Korean, Nigerian, and everything in between, absolutely riveted. Madame Kang sat in the front row. When Ada moved through the guests with the calabash, Madame Kang held out her hands and took a drink. Madame Kang said, quietly enough that only Ada could hear, "Make him worthy of you. He needs that more than he needs managing." Ada nodded once. "Stop underestimating him. He surprises you if you let him." Something moved in the older woman's face. Almost a smile. Married, but the real work, building something that lasts, is just beginning. Keep watching, friends. Years passed. Ada and Ji-hoon built the kind of life that does not arrive fully formed, but accumulates season by season, argument by argument, compromise by compromise, until one day you look around and realize you have made something real. The business bridge between Seoul and Lagos became one of the most talked about trade partnerships in both countries. Logistics, textile imports, cultural exchange, a restaurant group serving Nigerian Korean fusion cuisine to lines around the block. Ada founded the Okoro Kang Foundation, a resource center for African immigrants in Korea. Language support, legal navigation, job placement, community, she ran it herself. It was, she told Ji-hoon, the thing she was most proud of. He told her he agreed. He had funded it from the beginning. Madame Kang came around slowly, the way glaciers move, imperceptibly, powerfully, and in only one direction. It was Kai who broke through the last of her walls, specifically the moment he toddled into her sitting room, pulled himself up by her knee, and said her Korean title, followed immediately by the Igbo word for grandmother that Ada had been teaching him. Madame Kang sat very still for a moment. Then she picked him up and held him with a ferocity that surprised everyone in the room, including herself. Kai grew up understanding that he was not half of two things. He was entirely both things at once. He was, Ada told Ji-hoon one evening, the most himself person she had ever met. "He gets that from you," Ji-hoon said. Ada raised an eyebrow. "He gets it from both of us." Ji-hoon considered that. "Yes, both of us." He said it like he was still getting used to the sound of it, like it still surprised him a little to be included in something good. From a young Nigerian woman who stepped off a plane into a freezing Seoul winter, with nothing but a suitcase and a refusal to stop hoping, to the co-builder of an empire that bridges two continents. Ada's story is not a fantasy, it is a reminder that dignity cannot be taken from you unless you hand it over, that love is not a feeling that rescues you. It is a decision you make again and again with someone who is willing to make it with you. That the walls people build around themselves out of fear and prejudice and inherited hate can come down, but only if someone refuses to pretend the walls are not there. Ada never pretended. That was her real power. Now I want to hear from you. Did Ji-hoon earn Ada's forgiveness, or did she give it too soon? Was Madame Kang a villain or a woman trapped in the only world she had ever known? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. If this story moved you, please like this video and subscribe to the Storyverse TV. Turn on your notifications so you never miss a new story. We post new Afro-Korean storytelling every single week. Coming up next week, the Ghanaian dancer who stole the heart of a cold K-pop CEO. Trust me, you will enjoy every bit of it. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. I see you. That means everything. See you in the next one. Be the one that does not look away.